Welcome to the first of many video tutorials on the World Domination Custom Cabinetry app. Now that name is just being silly, but the objective of this app is to allow you to manage your business and manage it well if you're in the custom cabinetry business. So looking at the navigation on the left here, this will be a template in Notion. Notion is the engine behind it, and it is a codeless, there's some formulas involved, but it's a codeless programming app that allows you to create your own app. And I've created a template for custom cabinet makers. So going over the different features or different sections or pages, we have a dashboard, companies, contacts, projects, rooms, financials, processes, and images. And I'll touch on those briefly in this video, and then I'll try to go into depth into each one in their own videos for each section. So the dashboard is instructional, which is what this portion tells you, that this is just information. You don't do things here, you're just learning about the program here. And to start with, I tell you what the features of the program are, and these are not all inclusive. There's other things that it can do for you, but these are kind of the flagship features. So single source of truth, everything about your projects in one place, accessible from your PC, tablet, or smartphone. So all the things we see in here today, we could also be looking at on our smartphone at a job site or at a client's home. Also a second brain. We can't remember everything that we need to remember, so we have a storage place to be able to access those things very quickly, and that's a very valid method of doing business and doing business well. Mini CRM. Most cabinet makers don't take the sales part of cabinet making seriously enough. At least that's my opinion, and I think that that's one of the reasons that some cabinet makers aren't as profitable as they'd like to be, is that they allow their sales, or they ignore their sales, and in the long term they end up having gaps in their work schedule, and those gaps in their work schedule eat all the profit they made in the good times when they were busy. Sales pipeline, kind of working in conjunction with this mini CRM. CRM being customer relation management. This sales pipeline is trying to find people and work them through your system. So initially they may know about you, but it will go into depth in that, but you're basically trying to move them from somebody who doesn't know who World Domination Custom Cabinetry is to somebody who's doing business with World Domination Custom Cabinetry. And those steps can be anything you want them to be. I've simplified them down to they're not aware of you, to they have become aware of you, and then they're qualified. In other words, they need cabinetry, and then customer. But it can be a 6-step process, a 10-step process, whatever you want it to be. It's all just categories that you define, and then that creates a Kanban board to walk them through, and we'll look at that briefly. Ballpark estimates. I am a firm believer in giving people ballpark estimates. Not the traditional ballpark estimate of one number, the number they never forget. If you give somebody a ballpark estimate, no matter what your proposal is afterwards, they'll say, well, but your ballpark estimate, so it needs to be a range. It should always be a range. I think it should be 3 numbers. Best case scenario, if you picked what the average person picks, and then kind of the worst case scenario if you have really, really rich taste. And we'll briefly look at that as well. And then selections, gathering the selections you need to use for your estimating software, whatever that is, whether you're using your design software to estimate or estimating software specifically, however you estimate a job, gathering the things you need to get. This is just a good way to do it, because again, you can do it on your phone if you need to, or an iPad, or even a PC if you're in the showroom or in your office. And then a production schedule, really valuable part of this. This is managing your people and managing the process. Manage that job through a series of Kanban boards, and again, we'll look at that briefly. And then delivery schedule. To me, this delivery schedule is the meat of the system. This is the flagship feature of all the features. This is how I managed my business for 23 years, and I think that it is a big part of the success that we had in how we did that, and we'll look at that briefly. Then throughput accounting. Some of you may value this, some of you may not, but I think this is an incredibly valuable feature. Some people will value it more than others. Some people are not willing to go to the trouble or do the work that allows this to work. But we'll look at it, and you can decide for yourself. And there's also an image manager, or an image section. You see here that there's a page images. I don't speak to it here because it's not critical to the processes that you'll be doing. And here's some of the helpful metrics that you can get from this app if you use it and use it fairly well. Total cabinet quantity. After you've used it for a year, you'll know exactly how many cabinets you built in a year. Now, some people have been tracking that all along, and this is just redundant to that. But the byproduct of using this will give you that total cabinet quantity, which is a valuable resource to do some of these other things like tack time. And then you'll be able to calculate your tack time because you have a total cabinet quantity and you have a total revenue, sales, how many cabinets you built and how much you sold those cabinets for. You'll be able to get a tack time and some cost per cabinet, things like that. All these things are kind of the byproduct of this number and this number, really and truly. But tack time being how many cabinets you built in a year. And so then you start bringing that down to a month, a day, an hour kind of thing. Total revenue, just the byproduct of using it and entering the information. Cost per cabinet, because you've entered this information, we'll do a little math on it and give you a cost per cabinet. And then your throughput, which will be accessed through this financials portion of it. Again, we'll peek at that. And then your net profit. How much money did you make? So we'll look at each of these here in a moment, all these sections in a moment, but here are just step-by-step instructions of how I think this should be used. A little simple instruction here saying that each one of these is expandable by clicking on this black arrow to the left of it. These are called toggles, and it allows you to scan a bunch of information. So there's 19 steps here, and this would be really long to scroll through if they were all open, but you just open one, read through those instructions, and then close it up. So this, you're just reading through these instructions, how you should use this section, getting a client into your database and what that looks like, and just some instructions about how you would do that. Then you would just close that up, and then the next step, getting prospective clients a ballpark estimate and changing your room status to the ballpark estimate when you do that. And so then you click that, read all about that. These are just captured images telling you, showing you how you would do that. So very instructional. Instead of reading all these to you, just see that they're here and know that they're here, and we're actually going to go take a peek at them. So we'll start just at the top, kind of working toward that mini CRM. We have companies and contacts. This is pretty simple. We have in companies, the companies that we're wanting to try to target, or if they're already a customer, they're here in this column. You could even hide this column since they're already customers if you're in this mode of trying to look at this thing as a sales pipeline, but that's what this is. This is a view. There are multiple views in most sections, so if we looked at this in table view, or it wouldn't be nearly as helpful, although we can look at all the data about each one of these companies. It's not as helpful as the sales pipeline if your objective is to try to see where they're at in this process, working them left to right. So this first column is people that are suspects. They don't know who you are. You know who they are, but they don't know who you are. You've identified them and you want to try to make them a customer. And you're going to try to work them across this page, left to right, to become a customer. And then there's prospects. Some people will start as a prospect. They're aware of you. They already know who you are. So they'll start in this column. And then there's other people that are also qualified, and they'll start this column. But some people will start over here. They don't know who you are, and then you make them aware of you, and you move them to here. And moving them is as simple as just dragging them. So now that category for this prospect is changed automatically by you moving it, but you can also, and I'm going to put it back, so that moved it to the prospect category. By changing the category, you do the same thing. So now if I change it back to suspect, when we click off of this, he's back here in the suspect column. So the category, changing the category or sliding them is how you do that. So we got suspect, prospect, qualified, customer. We want to work them through that list and make them a customer. And this is just the visibility into, I have this objective of trying to make these people my customer, and I don't want to forget about that process, and I want to daily look in here and see where I'm at in that process. Contacts is just purely storage, keeping the people that either work for one of these companies or are your customers. Each one of these is a different type. These over here are related to companies. These that aren't related to a company are your customers typically. And even those, you might relate them to the builder and the contact that is the builder. And so in companies, Bill Akers is the owner of Akers Custom Homes. Mike Atkinson is the owner of Atkinson Construction. But when we come down here, this Barney Miller is a customer. And you see that here in the type. They're either a builder or the building owner. So these words can be anything you want. If you want to call this contractor, if you want to call these homeowners, if you want to call them customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, you just change those words and that's what it'll be from that point forward. So this is just storage for the people that you do business with on both sides of the transaction. You're either selling to or you are working with or buying from. It can be vendors as well if you wanted to. And so then kind of the meat of the system mostly falls into rooms, but all the rooms fit in a project. So we don't look at everything in the project level only, because I'm going to encourage everyone that uses this app to try to work your rooms down into, they're part of a project, but into bite-sized pieces. Don't work in large batches. So with this projects, it's kind of the holder for the whole project, and most of these are just test projects I've done in here to illustrate things. So we have test 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a bunch of test projects. We have some Buckley Kitchen, Chapman 114, Cleveland Kitchen. So Cleveland Kitchen only has one room, the kitchen. Chapman 114 has multiple rooms. If we looked here, we would see that, and we'll see it in the rooms in a second. Then because this is a kitchen, it's only got the kitchen. These might have some rooms or multiple rooms, and they may not. So we'll look at the rooms next, but this is kind of the storage place for the whole project. And the advantage of having this here is that you can scroll to the right and have the big picture. So this is the big picture, total project cost. And if this happened to represent a year, now this only represents a few months time, but if this represented a year, this would be your total sales for the year. And then you could use filters to say, I only want to see projects that were done in the year of such and such, 2020, 2021, whatever that year is. And you would see your total sales and the total cabinet quantity. This is total sales and total cabinet quantity for several months. Then we would go to the room level, and the rooms is where everything is at. And so here we see we have a Buckley Kitchen, but here Chapman 114, we've got all these rooms. We've got kitchen, master bath, laundry room, powder room, kitchen, and butler's pantry. We can put more than one room into a room in the sense that this rooms is storage rooms. It's not necessarily just one room. So if everything is the same for these two areas, the kitchen and butler's pantry, same door style, same finish, same hardware, functional and surface, all of those things, then I can combine them here if I want to. Don't know that there's a right or wrong, but you can do that. You can combine them if you want to, or you could still keep them separate and just answer the selection questions more than once. But this is all about this room. And we can open any room we want or any project we want. These list views are just that, a list view. But if you wanted to look at this particular room, let's say we wanted to look at this kitchen, we could open it and look at it in kind of this linear fashion of what happens as a room. But we can also look at the same information just scrolling left to right, although we're seeing in the context of all of these other things in here with it, where when we open it, we're just looking at this one room and all the details about this room. And so you could just real quick, we'll scan down through here. So we're naming the room. We're saying where the room is in our sequence of events. So we're at the design stage for this. If we click in this field, these are all of our different sequence of events, starting at ballpark, selections, estimate, field measure, and you'll see why this is important in a few minutes. Also the colors of these. Design, check field measure, proposal, engineering. These can be anything you want. The words can be, you can change them, or you can even add additional steps, or you can remove steps. You can make this as complex or simple as you want. But after engineering, we machine it, we finish it, we assemble it, we hardware it, we deliver it, we install it, it's complete. Or it needs to move to the end and they decline. So we gave them an estimate proposal and they declined it, because we also want to track our win-loss ratio. And so this last column gives us that ability to look at that win-loss ratio at the end of the year. All right. Let's dig a little deeper into this rooms area, because this is where the meat of the product is, right here. All of these different views. So right now the one we've been looking at is the selections table view. So we have an all table view, ballpark estimates, selections, production schedule, and then delivery schedule. This is just a slightly different filtered out version of the production schedule. So starting with the ballpark estimate, which would be the first thing that happened with a customer, we would come through here and just fill in a couple things. So if we added a new job, you just come down to the bottom and say I want to add a new job right here with the new button. And then you would answer just a very few questions, and then we give it a name, and we'll just call this test 13 since I see 12 there. And we'll say this is a master bath. And then we can tab or we can open it, however we want to do it. Then we would link it to a project. I'm not going to do that right now. I just want to kind of walk you through this process. I'm going to open it up. But that would be the first thing you would do, is link it to a project. Then give the room a name, and you could pick the name here. If the name is not there, you just type it in up here and it'll give you the opportunity to add it. But since we do have that one, we'll do that. Then you give the room a status. We're starting out, so we'd be doing a ballpark estimate, which is what we're doing. Then we would choose the designer salesperson, give it a proposed delivery date. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll actually be the delivery date. We can skip this field until we get to the point where we're ready to build the job. But to get this ballpark estimate, all we have to do is put in here an estimated cabinet quantity. So I'm going to say there's 21 cabinets. And then choose my rates. And I can do this one of two ways. So you can see I have the option to choose the rates there, but I can also come down here and say, hey, I want to use a new room template. In the new room template, you could do that at the very beginning or when I did it, but you see what it did is it filled that part in for me from that template. Also gave me the icon for the room. And so now we've got this these three estimates based on these rates. So these rates are from your past performance. You glean those from other parts of this program, and we have this low estimate, average estimate, and high estimate. And I would give that price to someone trying to pre-qualify them. You know, best case scenario, your job with 21 cabinets is going to cost you $18,900. If you pick what most people pick, it's going to cost you about $23,100. And if you have really rich taste, it's going to cost you $31,500. So that's the ballpark estimate. Quick and easy. The rest of this is all about additional steps you do through this, but you actually do them from each area. The next step, if they accept that ballpark estimate, is you come to selections. And we just come right back to that same, we just come to a different view, but we come back to that same job, open it up, and continue to answer those questions. So for the selections, again, we still don't know this actual cabinet quantity yet, so we would skip that, but I want to keep it in that position for other reasons. So we would come down here and say that the interior material, let's just kind of pick some stuff here real quick. UV plywood, it's going to be cherry. The edge band is going to be designer white, which doesn't make any sense, but I'm just picking stuff. Let's say it's going to be a shaker door, and the edge profile is LO34, and the door frame is square. And you can add as many of these things as you want and name them anything you want. Just the things that you need to enter into your estimating software would be entered in here. So I might say this top drawer is a slab, but then my deeper drawers are the shaker style. What drawer box? We'll just say it's a dovetailed birch drawer. And since it was cherry, we'll say that it's ginger with a sable glaze. And the sheen is 15, and you could have all the different sheens in there. Whatever your crown is, and then whatever your light rail is. And you've completed the selections for this test 13 job. Again, it still needs to be linked to a project, and I would have done that, but just for this sample, I don't need to do that right now. So the next thing we would do, once we'd gone through the estimate and the proposal and those processes, would be to go to the production schedule. So the estimate and proposal, if we jump right back into the selections process and jump into this job, to do the proposal, we would just simply come in here and say, after we created it in our estimating software, we'd come in here and say, okay, there really were only 20 cabinets, and let's say that the job cost was $22,850, just totally making up a number here. And then that would give us a per cabinet cost of $1,142. By having those numbers in here, when we get to our production schedule, we actually see those numbers. So that happens to be our job sitting there in ballpark estimate. And so when we're ready for this job to move forward, we start sliding this job from one section to the next. And so when the guy who's doing the selection process gets all these selections, and we should have changed that selections when I got done making the selection. So, and then once that estimate is done, you move to there. And once you've gone out and field measured the job, you move to there. But you could also, if you were in here and you were getting ready to, you had gone out and field measured it and you were getting ready to design it, you just come in here and pick it here. It does the same thing. It just moved it over into that next column. Then when you get done designing it, you move it to the double check your field measurements and just continue to move this thing through the process. And you see here this production schedule has all of the different jobs all the way through hardware delivery and installation and then complete, and then the jobs that you didn't win. So all of them are here, and this is the absolute best way to find your constraint. If you find one of these with a bunch of items in it, this is not real, but right now we would have to kind of be a toss-up between any of these that are two, but typically there would be one. If you always have a constraint, and that constraint would show up as having multiple items in it. So that's what the production schedule does. And then your delivery schedule is calendar view, and the calendar view helps you sort those jobs where they go, and we'll look at that again shortly, and I'll explain a little more about it. But this calendar view is how you come in here and decide where your next job can go. So if we were, let's see where we're at here. So we're in November right now, scrolling through November, and here's December 1st, and we're coming through and say, well, we wouldn't want to put a job on the week of Christmas, so keep coming into January. Right here is a week that we could probably put something, but we would want to look at the dollar volume in the jobs we've plugged in here already. And if our volume allowed, maybe this is too much work for us to do in one week, and some of it bleeds over into this week. But you find your blank spots of where you put your next job, so you can tell them early on where you can put it. And then you see here, these don't have the second two numbers, so these haven't been committed yet. You see here they have dollar values. If they don't have dollar values, just cabinet quantities, this is basically you've gone through this ballpark estimate, and you've said we could probably do your job here unless somebody else takes that week before you claim that week. But this gives you a clue of how many cabinets are in that job. So if it's a week, partial week, or half, we know that if the cabinet quantity is around 20, we know that's a full week for the company that wants $20,000 in sales. So 6 is definitely not a week. We're looking for more sales than that. 40 is 2 weeks. So that really gives you a really good idea where you can plug jobs in. So that's how the meat of this system works, going through rooms, is ballpark estimates, selections, production schedule, and delivery schedule. You'll use this rooms area more than anything else. And then the financials is getting a little more sophisticated here. And this is somewhat complicated in one sense, but very simplistic in another. So there's a lot of information going on here, and you need to be able to feed us that information from somewhere. Now this is just like a table of contents. We can skip to the end if we wanted to. If we wanted to go to the very bottom, we clicked on that. It would, instead of scrolling down to the bottom, we can go to any of these sections that are below this by just clicking on the sections. But if we scroll down, we can get there as well. So the first thing we're trying to do is, here's all of our rooms, all the rooms we did, and we're trying to determine when we build that. And it's separate from this delivery date, and it might be that this is November and this is December. I don't know how you do that, but we're giving you the ability to, at this point in time, you've done all of this stuff prior. It's just showing here. This would be blank when you first come in, just like these last few are. They haven't been answered yet. They haven't been tagged to a build month. But that's what we're asking you to do here is, once this job has gotten far enough along that it's really complete is when you should do it. Once we get into February, then we would tag this as 2021-02. And this one would be also tagged as 2021-02, and this one would be 2021-03. But we're tagging our projects as we go down this list. This is just for reference only, and I tell you that in these instructions just to be able to look at it in this calendar view. This is, in my opinion, the most valuable part of this app. The next thing I'd ask you for is your operating expenses, and I just tell you right down here how to get that from QuickBooks, real short and sweet. All you got to do is make sure that all your totally variable expenses are listed as chart of accounts. That's all you have to do. And so totally variable expenses are things that change if you sell one more cabinet, or change if you sell one less cabinet. So you buy less of them if you do one less cabinet, you buy more of them if you do one more cabinet. So rent doesn't work that way. Utilities don't work that way. Insurance doesn't work that way. But subcontract labor does work that way. So if you are subcontracting your installations, they would be not here in operating expenses. They would be in the totally variable expenses, or the cost of sales. We're telling you how to grab these numbers from QuickBooks here. But you have two sets of these numbers: operating expenses, and then if we scroll down just a little, skip past this and come back, and then totally variable costs. So these totally variable costs are the things that change if you sell one more or one less. These operating expenses do not change if the rent doesn't change, and your salary typically does not change. If you sell $80,000 one month and $60,000 the next month and $80,000 the next month and $40,000 and $120,000, typically your employee count doesn't change much. It's usually a percentage. If you are doing $120,000 and you have one more man, it's still a percentage of that sale. So you kind of have to buy into that, but it's true, and it proves out to be true. We don't lay off every single time we have a bad month, and we don't hire every time we have a good month. Our business sales fluctuate, but our employees don't fluctuate except just the regular turnover that comes with time and the unique nature of a human being. So operating expenses are these types of things, the communications, insurance, maintenance, the things that do not change just because you build one more or sell one more or one less cabinet. And you can do these individually, add as many of these fields as you want and identify them and track them, and it adds them up. Or you can grab them from QuickBooks and leave all these blank at 0 and just put it in this one field. It'll do the same thing. It'll total it up the same way. So if I put 14,565 here and leave all these at 0, I'll still get the same total to work from. And then the totally variable costs, a little harder, and we give you 2 ways to deal with this. That's why the instructions are so long. So if you know what they are, you can enter them here. You can enter them individually, like we're showing here in November. If we wanted to, we could have said, okay, my exterior components, I bought all those from Conestoga, let's say, and I would enter the total dollars for those here, and then I would enter the total dollars for maybe my cabinet parts from Cabinage here. Or I just enter all of them, which is what we ended up doing, is just all of that was $43,908 for the month of November. Another way of doing that is, and I'll show you here, so we're telling you about this above the line performance. This is awesome stuff, and we'll go deep into it in a separate video. I'm just trying to do an overview and trying to keep it as short as I can, but it's almost impossible. So if we come down here to our, and I don't have many months in here, so this is not as effective as it would be if I had a bunch of months in here, but so we have November, December, and January, and we're in the middle of December right now. And so we see here that for the month of November we made a 33% net profit, and if we do all the things that I've attributed here for December, I've gone ahead and attributed to all the sales, even though we haven't done them all yet, I've gone ahead and attributed them, we could make 32%. Well, I've done the same thing for January. I've worked out all the things. That's not how it would work. These would be really bad initially. You'd have hardly any sales, and typically you wouldn't apply your costs either. I've just done that, so I'm trying to mock all this up. Ultimately, it won't be this even number. These will be terrible at the beginning if you actually have just a couple sales and you attribute all of your costs. You could even attribute your costs week to week as you paid them. I don't think people are going to want to do that. But the secondary method of going about this is, so we've got a roll up here that is from you entering something up here. So you can see that January is 34,531. Doesn't do anything but move it down here. You've still got to type something in here. But I'm also doing this calculation based off you telling me. So if you were doing an all outsourced business model, this low investment, low overhead business model where you bought everything, you didn't have equipment and manufacturing plant, you just assembled cabinets, sold them, designed it, engineered it, ordered everything, assembled it, and delivered it, and installed it, that's a different business model. This number is going to be a lot higher for you than it is for somebody that theirs might be on the total variable cost as low as 20-25%. Most are probably going to fall somewhere between 25 and 30. But these guys don't have all the plant labor. They don't have it. So all the labor falls into the cost of the materials because they're buying all the materials. It's not a different total typically. It's just that pieces of the total are different. So one person's overhead, these numbers over here are going to be higher, and these over here are going to be lower, and then another person, they're going to be higher over here and lower over there, depending on what your business model is. But we're giving you the ability on the total variable cost to type either the rolled up number or have us calculate a number for you, and then you type that number. So you're going to type one of these two numbers. This one is just looking at the total sales and saying, hey, about 50% of that is going to be my total variable cost. And this, looking at this from a 30,000 foot view, kind of like a master's in business administration would, an MBA guy would look at everything from 30,000 foot view. He's not going to get down in the bushes. We don't really care if this is 51% this month or 49% this month. We just want to get a good idea of what our total variable costs are, and then what our operating expense is. And operating expense could also be done that way. I haven't done that yet, but I may add those additional columns where you're typing this in rather than filling in all those individual pieces. But the net result is you see your net profit, and early in the month, so in this current month right now, this should not be 32%. It should have a few sales because I'm early in January, and could have some calculated cost, or it could be a great number because I haven't put any costs in. At the end of the month is when I do it. The current month should be almost irrelevant. What you should really be looking at is past performance. And if we want to take a real quick peek at what one would look like in past performance, I've mocked this up, and these are real numbers for a particular customer that is using the program. So if we came into his financials for this company, we've mocked up we've gone back and recreated the whole year because we created this after this year. So here's all of his jobs for the year, and then here's the rooms, looking at it month by month of when they were delivered. And then here's all of his operating expenses through the year. And of course, this was a new startup company, so you'll see when we get down here, here's his total variable costs, and we'll show you the different ways of doing that. But when we look at this past 12 months, this is pretty cool. We're seeing his net profit up here. Now, he didn't have any overhead initially. He wasn't paying himself for these first 3 months. He's just saying, do I even want to do this? This is a completely different business model. But January, February, March, he didn't pay himself anything. He already had a cell phone. He already had vehicles. He just didn't have any expenses. But he did have pretty significant sales for somebody who wasn't technically in the cabinet business yet. And then he said, by April, he said, yeah, I do want to do this. And so we said, hey, well, let's pay ourselves something. Let's pay ourselves $500 a week. And so we started doing that for the next 3 months, and his net profit is pretty stout with no overhead. Then we said, well, heck, yeah, I definitely want to do this. So we started paying ourselves $1,000 a week, and then here in November, we decided, yes, this is the business I want to be in, and I'm going to start attributing the appropriate amount, even though I have another company that is paying all this overhead because I'm working out of the back of a building I already have. We're going to let the cabinet company pay its portion. So then, and this month wasn't done yet. We did this in November, so it had a negative because we didn't finish out the sales, and we did put in all these expenses. So, but this is a beautiful way to look at this. Like, I'm waiting as I'm coming into November, December. Again, I haven't gone back and updated all of this. For this negative to become zero ultimately. That's what you would be watching in that other view, is this one, looking for it to get to zero. Where are the sales at? Keeping my eye on sales. And then looking for this. It should be horrible initially because you're going to have no sales, but maybe you've attributed the costs. And that's up to you when you attribute them. And attributing the costs is nothing more than filling in this column. Month paid for the variables and the operating expenses, and then up here at the top is this month billed. And so when you add that in is when it shows up at the bottom. So it's a pretty awesome way of doing that. Then the last thing I want to show you is this processes area. And the processes area is the ability to have, it's an operations manual or standard operating procedures completely reimagined. We're taking these things and looking at them per job rather than having this list of things that we tell people to do in a 3-ring binder or in a Pentaflex thing that you mount to the machine and say, here's what when you can build a cabinet, do this, this, and this. When you engineer a cabinet, do this, this, and this. Well, you have this list, and if you skip a step, you have no way to know you did because it's just a bulleted or numbered list. Well, this is, so if we come down here, and we'll skip some of this stuff, but this is like the big overview sequence of events for our company. A new employee coming in should be required to read all this. Now, it's not huge when it's all rolled up. It's fairly big, but not huge. But you unroll it as you do it, and you would have every new employee read all of it and then reference it, and you're referencing it per job. I'm tying it to this test one kitchen. This operations manual, these steps are for this kitchen. So if I'm doing my estimating procedures and I have never done it before, now you'd have to have some sort of training, but if I'd never done it before, I still wouldn't remember everything I was told. But once I had run through it with somebody, I could do it because I'm checking it off. From the clients tab, do this. From the jobs tab, do this. From the job tab, do this too. From the client info tab, do this. And as I do these things, I'm checking them off. Saying, yep, I've done that. Yep, I've done that. Phone rings. I go answer the phone. I go deal with it. I come back. Okay, I need to come back here. It's not a numbered list that I don't remember where I was. It's not a bulleted list that I don't know where I was. At the end of the job, if something is wrong, you can come back and see you've got the breadcrumb trail of that this was done. This will still be checked or unchecked. If somebody skipped a step, you'll know who. So, you can actually look at it and find who did that, who checked that. So this is operations manual, standard operating procedures, those type of things reimagined, and we have them for the estimating, field measure processes, design procedures, whatever your design software is. And this is a template. You would take this and make it for you. You might put Cabinet Vision there. You might put Mosaic there. And then you would change the steps that are in here of what you want to do. But again, it's a checklist of things. And then you can have sub-lists. So we don't always do this, but if I need to do that, and I think you should every time, but we can also qualify it and say, okay, this is a big long list of things, but I can have some little simple instructions here, additional instructions to the primary instructions. I can come in here and say, look, I need you on these orange items, all these items that are orange, I need you to check them for every single job. Always check them. These orange items are only checked if you have staggered cabinets, either staggered in height or staggered in depth. These you typically keep all the time, so these are your defaults, and unless something weird is happening, you can ignore the gray ones. And these red ones we're not using anymore. We've stopped using them. So if I come down through this really long list, I could very quickly come here and do these three, these two, this one, and I'm done. I've done all of the ones that are orange, and then I can check them off as I go and then jump out of here. So you can qualify them that way, and you can create any list like that if you need to. If there's things they're allowed to ignore, you can qualify it with simple instructions. Then there's like the reminders. Did you do these things? Just like those almost a second pass through. Did you do these really critical things that we tend to make mistakes at? And you can have that for every single process. Engineering procedures through the different pieces of software that you use typically. The receiving inventory. How does when somebody receives inventory, they come in here and it's a checklist. Then the actual manufacturing process. Each and every one of them defined. So if they were getting ready to start the CNC, and if they've never used it, we had employees over and over and over again, temporary employees, come in and work after 15 minutes of instruction and then just keep going back through this list and do this, and this. Now, we don't put check boxes next to these because you're doing it over and over and over again, and we wouldn't want to check them and uncheck them. We do, and they can pay attention. It's not that many steps, really and truly. And most of them are not dealing with this part. But you're kind of doing this when you start them out. Okay, we're going to get ready to work, set up, and then we might need to do the following if necessary. But this is the part we would have in the new, temporary employee doing. Okay, I need you to do this. Just go through these steps. There's not that many, and then process your parts like this, and then shut down the router. And on weekends and weekdays, we just differentiate what happens. Pretty simple instructions, and you can make any of these checkboxes you want. They can be a numbered list, they can be a bulleted list. If you think that a checkbox is better, it's easy to change it. So there's all the machining processes, and you can edit every single one of them, make them anything you want. And then all the assembly procedures for assembling the cabinets, and we literally go in here step by step. You can, with your iPhone, you could edit this and make it anything you want it to be. You can switch that picture out in a matter of seconds, take a new picture and put it in there. But we're walking through these steps. Review the drawings for the cabinet, locate the parts for the cabinet, put the drawer guide on. If it's got pull-out shelves, to do this instead. Here's the drawer guide you use for each different depth of cabinet. If it's a Zargan, if it's a Nova Pro, if it's a undermount slide, whether that's Bloom or Grass or whatever. Put your hinge plates on. This is the one you use for these types of cabinets if it's Bloom. This is the plates you use if you're using Grass for the different types of cabinets. These are kind of specialty instructions for the extended end versus the blind versus the diagonal versus a triangle cabinet, those kind of things. You've got all your different step by step. Put your deck down and put your leg sockets on. Fold up the side and staple it on. Fold up the other side and staple it on. Put the nailer in. You just step by step cut out this little bit of edge banding so the back will slide in. Slide the back in. Screw it, and you got a picture. There should be a staple there, a staple there, a staple there, and then when you get done, you're running a screw there and a screw there. Make sure it's square. Staple the back in with that particular stapler. Add another staple here. I mean, you can be as specific as you want, right down to drill with that drill. Sand off any nibs with that, and then put it where it goes. So you can get as specific as you want to get with this, all the way through even installation. Let's pop back up and close this one. This one's pretty big, so it takes a minute to scroll back up to the top of this one because it's so big. But we have the same thing for installation. And there's finish processes, hardware procedures, delivery procedures, but in full access layout, and then the full access wall and tall cabinets. I mean, we come through and we talk about how to do these things. Even those accessories or the assembly, I didn't go far enough, but there's even videos for each of the special cabinet types. You know, there's a wall cabinet, and then a diagonal wall cabinet, and then a pie cut wall. You know, there's a video for each of those, and you can create those videos with a smartphone in a matter of minutes. So this gives you, you know, the installation process. If your guys are out in the field and they're doing this, okay, we've put up the steel rail. Now we're, you know, doing this. Now we're doing this. If the homeowner calls you back at the office, you can pop into your phone right then and look and see where they're at. And say, yeah, they're getting ready to install the base cabinets. They've already installed the wall whatever. Wherever they're at in this, you can pop in and say where they're at in the process. And then if something turns out to not be done, you know, there's some accountability. Who checked that box? Who said you did it and you didn't do it? That kind of thing. So that's the big picture overview of the World Domination Custom Cabinetry app. We'll go into each one of these things that we briefly looked at in depth in following videos. And thanks for watching.